John, this is Jim Avery. I want to go back to your intersection of Newtown-Yardley Road and the bypass. Having had a few close calls there, you mentioned about street markings. I hope that we're also going to add clearer overhead markings, because when the traffic backs up, the cars towards the rear don't see the street markings, and it is a real problem. I've had a number of close calls.
Well,
there.
the street markings I was talking about were the dashed lines along the road that shows you where the lanes are while you're making the turn.
Understood.
And that's supposed to be done right now. Our engineers have been trying to get the company that's been doing our road work to tell them when they're going to get around to doing that. And so far, they haven't gotten any answer. But, I'm sure the road construction company is going to come to us and ask for a final payment, which I'm going to deny unless they have those lines painted there. Also in the Wawa plan, they had some designs for that intersection. There was all kinds of lines painted on that intersection.
Understood. Thank you.
So, frankly, I don't know if that intersection can ever be made safe if Wawa gets in there and the apartment complex. Be a lot of traffic, especially in the morning rush hour. So.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes. Hi, this is Ed Jurgelewicz. I've been attending some of the meetings about the Wawa, and the one question I had was, wasn't there like an issue with their building being too close to a residential property that was rented by the church?
Yes.
And wouldn't that still be an issue?
Yes, it would. So my understanding is if they go to court and get approval, the Newtown supervisors can still, bring that issue up and limit the hours of operation. That's in the E30 ordinance. But, this is a legal quandary for me. I'm not a lawyer. And so suppose they win their substantive challenge, right? That means it goes, whatever the E30 ordinance says, the new ordinance that we created that has that in there about the residential unit, it doesn't apply anymore. It goes back to, they could do anything they want, basically. There's no rules. That's something I'd have to clarify with our attorney.
I actually did want to ask a quick question about the Wawa development. So I know you mentioned the access road that the Wawa is proposing, as it was it used to be like a one owner of the whole property. I saw that access road kind of it looks like it would go across where those power lines are, and I was wondering, is that in the future will that road go right under those power lines? Is that not an issue?
The developer of that property, I didn't show it on that image, had a parking lot in that area. So I don't know how they worked that out with Pico. There's certain things you can't put under the power line, but maybe there are things you can. I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. But definitely that road was put there to provide access to the adjacent property should it be needed. It could remain a road to nowhere forever, but I'm sure they'll figure out a way to manipulate somebody to get it to work.
Is that on your the image you showed? Is that a senior living proposal? Is that just like an idea, or has that actually been submitted by anybody?
It was just an idea, kind of what they call a sketch plan.
Gotcha.
They brought it before the Board of Supervisors at a work session where no decisions are made, and we made our comments, and frankly, I forget what my comments were. I mean, obviously, I didn't like the idea at the time because it's not allowed by our zoning. And it's something, again, that is impinging upon the bypass. And so I don't think they got a good reception from the Board of Supervisors when they came forward with that. But who knows? They can wait until there's a different board, maybe, and come again.
And that land is zoned like an office district, right? Like for office buildings, I think.
Right, offices and research. Well, offices, they're figuring a lot of more people are working at home, and there's vacancies already in a lot of offices. But for me personally, I'm trying to preserve that area as kind of open space. But it's privately owned, and the owners can come in with different plans at different times. So we'll have to see what happens.
John, this is Ivan Winegar. This is not a monumental question, but is anything happening with Clark Park?
That's on my wish list that should be added to the comprehensive plan. You mean the trail there, or the watershed, the work they're supposed to be doing to on the watershed?
Clean up down trees.
Excuse me?
Clean up the down trees, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard of anything. I think maybe a few months ago they did mention that they did take down some trees in the park. But, from my understanding, there were lots and lots more still to be there. So it would be an ongoing issue that we haven't spoken about recently. But that's why I put it on the list. And I hope the Planning Commission tomorrow thinks it's important enough to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that this be part of the Newtown's wish list for the 10-year plan. Maybe it'll take 10 years, but,
Priorities.
Yeah. My wish list has about 13 items on it, so there are a lot of things to take care of, I think.
This is Valerie Mihalek from Newtown Walk. How are you?
Hi, Valerie. How you doing?
Good. I just wanted to add to what you were saying about the pedestrian crosswalk at Newtown-Yardley Road and Tower Boulevard, that both you and Supervisor Fisher, along with State Rep Perry Warren, have met with residents of the community there, and that it was founded by three of you how dangerous the pedestrian crosswalk is. And we appreciate your taking the time to come to the area and actually see what we have been saying about the speed limit and how dangerous it is due to the line of sight and all the other issues that we've brought up that that was apparent. I mean, the day that you and Supervisor Fisher came, the unfortunate thing was there was no sun because it was cloudy and rainy. But when the sun glare is there in the morning and at the end of the day, it's even more pronounced with the visibility. I did want to add also that Supervisor Fisher emailed us and said that he drove back to the intersection that evening after a planning meeting and stated that in the dark, it is also very difficult to see if a pedestrian was in the crosswalk. So I just wanted to add that because in your opening statement, it almost sounded as if it was just the residents that were saying all of this, but I wanted to add that we have met with you and Supervisor Fisher and Representative Warren, and everyone is in agreement the severity of what is taking place there. Supervisor Mack was brave enough to walk into the crosswalk while cars were approaching, put his arm out to get cars to stop, and they would not stop. This happened both times when you were crossing, we were actually afraid that you were actually going to get hit. So I think as we've mentioned, multiple times, that there's a multitude of issues here. One being, as Greg Zukowski has pointed out multiple times, who is a homeowner in our neighborhood, the issue of the line of sight issue. Then we have the issue of the speed, as another neighbor pointed out, Mark Bjorkman, who I believe is on the call as well. He was actually, when you were there, and he did this when Representative Warren was there, he was tracking people's speed with his phone, and people were not doing anywhere near 35 miles per hour, which presents another problem. But then when you have the sun glare, which we had when Representative Warren was there, it's even more difficult. So I think at times people don't see, if you remember that one time when you were coming back over the crosswalk, by the time the car saw you and they tried to stop, the person behind them almost, rear-ended you. So unlike other crosswalks throughout Newtown, we have an unusual situation because it is a mid-block crosswalk. And then we have the whole line of sight issue, whereas many of the crosswalks throughout the community are actually in an intersection and don't have the line of sight issue that is here. And again, I just want to reiterate, it's not just for the Newtown Walk community, it's for all the communities surrounding the area, as it is a way for pedestrians throughout the area here along Lower Jolington Road to get into the borough, as the borough and the township have become a destination and are a walking destination for many of the residents have moved to these areas.
Well, the engineers have made the study, and they'll be presenting that, and I hope that the actual traffic engineer will be at the meeting on Wednesday. Do you expect a lot of residents to be attending that meeting?
Yes, we are encouraging many residents to attend the meeting.
So I want to be sure that on Wednesday we have the right traffic data before us, because you're looking at something and the engineers may have looked at something else. You know what I mean? Yes,
and that's, I think, I'll speak for myself. I'm a little concerned about that because depending on how long they're there for, the time of day they're there, right. They may get a different interpretation of what is actually happening there as opposed to the time that we met with you and Representative Warren.
We'll have to hash it out on Wednesday.
Okay, sounds good. And again, thank you for taking the time to meet with us at the crosswalk. We appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate putting my life on the line for my residents.
Which is literally what was happening there. So thank you.
On the budget, in terms of deciding whether or not you're going to support the tax increases, the $500,000 for the ambulance squad was approved in a referendum, so I think that should be supported. The $1 million for the fire fund, my understanding is that going forward, the Newtown Fire Association will not be buying the fire trucks, but the township will be funding them. The Fire Association will fund smaller vehicles, but not the major purchases. And so if that's the case, if that's the deal you made, then you got to start accruing for that. So I don't see much there. In the spending, that's obviously a big nut to be spending $2.6 million. And what I keep saying this at the meetings, what I don't understand is, what is the problem with doing a 5-year plan? Why is your township manager so against doing a 5-year plan? Why are you guys insisting on it to see where all this spending is leading? Have an idea what it all means. I'm just saying, I think the 5-year plan was done by eConsult, and they said that you should be updating it every year. I haven't seen one. If you've got one, you're keeping it hidden. I've never seen one discuss any updates since one that was done 3 years ago. I just have two follow-up things. On the business commons and that apartment building, whatever happened to the idea of building mixed-use housing, either something with stores on the bottom and a housing above, or or live workspace. I thought there was some talk about repurposing that area, that you bring in residential, but only in conjunction with business.
Well, that is something that has been proposed for the OLI district, like the business commons.
Right, but where that apartment building's going, why would they build that as opposed to something, in New Britain, they built this thing, Butler Square, and it's all stores, first level, and then it's apartments 2 levels above that.
Well, I don't know. That's a private property. The developer can propose to build whatever they want there, but we don't have a zoning use that specifies that in the OR zone. What we're trying to do is do an overlay district in the OLI and LI district for that, among other things, including eating establishments in the business commons area. Depends what kind of stores you're talking about, but it was mentioned to have services like dry cleaners, things like that. When people are going to work in the business commons, they can get some of their things done that they would ordinarily be able to do at lunch hour. But driving into the center of Newtown is often not available to many office workers there who might have only a half an hour for lunch. So
dry cleaning needs they have. I would just try to think of something that's going to attract professionals. People are going to pay earned income tax. What would those people want to be attracted to that area, as opposed to, let's say, Doylestown, cafes, things like that? I don't know. And then the other question, John, I had is, with this whole comprehensive plan, what exactly is the benefit to Newtown Township of being part of this jointure? It just seems that Wrightstown and Upper Makefield keep their nice rural existence, and we've got to deal with things like Wawa. What do we get out of this?
Well, that's a good question. And at the last zoning JZC meeting, I kind of hinted at that when I wanted to do my list to add recommendations, right away, Upper Makefield and Wrightstown. So not in my comprehensive plan, you're not putting that list. So I said, well, maybe that's why Newtown Borough got out of the jointure.
But maybe we should be looking at what do we get out of it? And if we're not getting what we want, either ask for more or get out of it.
It requires a little bit of research. What are we not getting out of it versus what are we getting from it? Does the benefits outweigh the risks, or whatever you want to call it? Of course, Wrightstown will always say, well, you can have a quarry and you need to have a use for a quarry in your town. Why don't you do that? I'm not sure a quarry would even be able to make any money in these.
We just get the trucks driving through.
Yeah. And they're all going to stop at Wawa.
I guess so.